Hi everyone. In this video, we'll be talking about CloudTrail, which is a one-stop shop for most of your AWS logging needs. We'll be doing a demo for a particular type of event in CloudTrail called data event. Now, data events provide information about the resource operations performed on or within a resource. These are also known as data plane operations. Some examples of these data events include item level API activity happening on your DynamoDB tables. For example, put item, delete item, or update item. Another example would be object level API activity happening within an AWS S3 bucket. For example, get object, delete object, put object, etc. For a better understanding of this video, it would be good to get some fundamental knowledge of CloudTrail. I've penned this down in a short and simple article at cloudsecuritymasterclass.com, so please read that. Before we start the lab, a couple of important things to note. First, data event is not the only event logged by CloudTrail. When CloudTrail launched in 2013, the only event it logged at that time was management event, which are control plane operations. And very recently, AWS has started providing insight events as well, which provide important logs of abnormal activities happening in the AWS account. Also important to note is that the process that we use in this lab to create these data events is not the only way to do this in AWS. We will be creating a CloudTrail resource called Trail to detect data events, but you could also do this by creating an event data store in CloudTrail Lake, or you could also create resource logs like S3 access logs. Both of these topics I hope to cover in future videos. All right, let's take a look at the blueprint for this demo. This is a very simple demo compared to what we have done before. We are working on a single AWS account. In this account, we will be creating an S3 bucket with an object text file within it called demo.txt. We will also create a trail resource in CloudTrail that tracks a particular API event called delete object for only this particular AWS S3 bucket. We will configure the trail to store the logs of any events that it detects in a separate AWS bucket called the CloudTrail logging bucket. So any delete object API event that is triggered on the CSM bucket demo would be detected and logged by the CloudTrail, and stored, and logs for that event would be stored in the CloudTrail logging bucket. We will then trigger this event from an IAM role by deleting the demo.txt object from the S3 bucket. Finally, we will see and analyze the logs generated by CloudTrail. So let's begin. Let's start the demo by creating the CloudTrail trail resource. So we are in the AWS console, logged into this AWS account. We'll be going to the CloudTrail section, and we'll make sure we are logged into the right region. And if you go to the CloudTrail section, you can see that there are multiple options here. But before we create the trail, let's look at event history. Now, when you're creating a CloudTrail resource, keep in mind that there are some things that CloudTrail does by default. It stores management events for your last 90 days by default in any AWS account. But this does not include the data events. So we'll have to go to the trail section and create a trail in order to log our data event. So let's give this trail a name. And for enabling this for my entire organization, I'm turning this option off since I'm only detecting events in this particular AWS account. But if you're doing this for your entire organization, or you want to do this for multiple AWS accounts, make sure you click on this option. In terms of the storage, we'll be creating a new S3 bucket. So let me adjust the name of this bucket here. And then I'm turning off SSE KMS encryption and log validation, since those are not important for this demo and I want to save cost for this trail. So with that, let's click on next. Next, we'll select the type of event that this trail will be monitoring. Management events is selected by default, but for this demo, we are only capturing data events. So I'm going to be selecting that option. Next thing, we'll be looking at selecting event selectors. And this is very important because data events are high volume and they can be very costly. So you don't want to be doing this for all the AWS services and for all types of events, right? Here we'll be selecting the S3 service specifically, since we are targeting that one in this demo. And the second option that we have here is selecting the types of events. It could be all events, it could be read only, write only, but the option that we would be selecting for this demo, and I think most of you doing this for your own organization would also be interested in, is the custom option here. So let's select that custom option. Let's now give this selector a good description of what we're trying to achieve with this filtering criteria. So in our demo, we are logging only the delete object API event happening in only a single bucket called the CSM bucket demo. So that's our description. And if we go down to select the particular filter for this, so we have three fields here: the resource ARN, read only, and event name. The resource ARN is the ARN for the S3 bucket that we want to be monitored. So let me put that value in here. Now, keep in mind this bucket is not yet created, but that's all right. We can still do this here. Also keep in mind that I have put the ARN incorrect here. It should be S3 instead of the bucket there. I had to correct that later on to make the demo work. So if you're just following this video, make sure you type in the right ARN here. And then the second field here is the event name field. This one, in order to identify this one, I'll show you how you can do that. You have to click on this info tab here, and from there go to data events. This will take you to the AWS documentation. Scroll down to the Amazon S3 object level API activity. From there, you can see a list of all the data APIs that are logged by CloudTrail for the S3 type of resource. And from here, you can pick up the right one that's applicable to you. For our use case, we'll be looking at delete objects and delete object. So let's copy the delete object from here and paste it to the event name value here. Delete object, the difference between delete object and delete objects is that delete object is only deleting a single object from the command line, but delete objects is the API that's triggered from the console. We're actually not going to use delete objects, but just to make it realistic, let's include both of these here. So if you see the JSON now, you can see the fields that we have put in: the name, we have the uh, event category, which is data. That's there by default. We haven't really done anything to include that, but when you select the data event, this would automatically show up. The resource type is S3 because we selected S3 service, the ARN of the S3 bucket, and the two event names that we want to be um, monitored, which is delete object and delete objects. So let's click on next here and go forward to review the details for the trail that we have that we will be creating, and everything looks good here. So we can come down and click on the create trail option in order to create this trail. With the trail created, we can see that the status of this trail is logging, so that's good. And we can also see that this is storing the logs in the S3 bucket here. So let's go to the S3 section and just confirm if we do see this S3 bucket there. So yes, we can see the S3 bucket, the logging bucket, and if we click on it and go down the rabbit hole of the objects within it, we can see at the end that there are no actual logging files, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is CloudTrail logs every 5 minutes. So depending on when your event happens, you might not actually see that event in 5 minutes. And the second reason is that you have to have that event actually happen for it to show up in the logs. So in our case, there hasn't been delete object or delete objects API activity, so nothing shows up in the logs at this point. I'll be using the AWS CLI to create my S3 bucket in IAM role. I am logged into the CLI using an IAM user account, and I'll be using the AWS S3 MB command to create the bucket called CSM bucket demo. I'll be creating a local object or local text file called demo.txt with some random demo text within it, and then I'll be using the cp command to upload this demo.txt file to my S3 bucket. With that done, let me switch to the AWS console and verify this. I do see my bucket here, and if I click on the bucket, click on refresh, I can see the demo.txt object. Now I'll be creating the IAM role that will be performing my event, which is the deletion of object from the S3 bucket. For this role, I'll be first creating a trust policy, which defines who is able to assume this role. Then I am going to use the IAM create role command to create this role, which is aptly called role for deleting object. With my role created, I'm going to attach permissions to this role for it to be able to perform the S3 actions. So I will be assigning the Amazon S3 full access manage policy to this role. So let's go ahead and do our event now, or trigger our event, the delete object event. So I'll be assuming the IAM role that I just created, exporting the credentials for it, and configuring the AWS profile assumed role. As you can see, this profile is now set up to use the credentials for role for deleting object, which is the role that we want to use for performing the delete object action. So with that set up, let's go ahead and run our AWS command for delete object, and we'll be passing the bucket name of CSM bucket demo here, and we will be deleting the demo.txt key here using the assume role profile. So let's delete this object. So no output means that the program has run. Let's go back in the console and verify. And yes, we don't see the demo.txt object here, so our role must have deleted it. All right, so let's start the last and the most important segment of this video, which is auditing the delete object event. So let's go ahead and go to the CloudTrail section and see how we can analyze this delete object event from the CloudTrail section. Before we even go to trails, let's take a look at event history again. Now, we talked about this at the introduction for this video, and we said that event history shows the management events for the last 90 days. Now, this is a good section for you to understand the difference between management events and data events, right? So the events that we did earlier on in this video, when we created the S3 bucket, or we started the CloudTrail logging and we selected the put event selectors for the CloudTrail trails, right? Those are all management events or operational events. But what doesn't show up here are data events, like the time when we uploaded the S3 object or the time that we deleted the S3 object. So that's really the difference between management events and data events. And if you click on create bucket event here, you can see that the JSON record and the format of the JSON record, and this is the same format that you will later on see for the data event as well. So good to know that the formatting of these events are exactly same, and but the APIs for which they are triggered is different. So with that said, let's go back to Trails and see our S3 bucket that is hosting the data event, and see if that event is stored there now. All right, so I am in the S3 bucket, and I do see a folder for CloudTrail. If I click on it, and I don't really have any logs at this point. So as I said, CloudTrail takes 5 minutes to generate the logs, so we might have to wait for it to process it. So I'm going to pause this video and come back when I do see the log file. Okay, so it's been some time now. Let me click and refresh, and I do see the log file now. So I see the region here, US West 2. That's the region from where we triggered the delete object action. And if I click on it, I see the year, the month, the date, and finally the log file. So this is in JSON format, but has been compressed. So let me download this on my computer and open it up in my local editor. So this is the JSON event. It doesn't look pretty now. Let me open it up into JSON pretty print, and here we have the event in a better format to look at. So as you can see, the most important thing with regard to this event is the ARN of the user identity that was used for triggering this event. So as you can see, it's the role for deleting object, which is the role that we use to trigger this delete object API. We can see the account ID, the access key ID that was used by this role, and other user identity details like the session context, right? If the request was MFA authenticated or not, right? We also see event time, which is so important for incident responders, and then the event name rightfully is delete object. And we can also see other identifying details for the actor, which is like the source IP address, the user agent of the browser from where it was triggered, and then the request parameters, right? The bucket name for which the action is being performed, the host name, which is the bucket URL, and the object that was deleted, demo.txt, right? There are other very important fields here to understand that you can take a look at. But that's it for the video. We have logged in a data event using CloudTrail, stored it in S3, and able to open it up and see the details for it. So thank you so much for watching this video. And please guys subscribe. That gives me the motivation to make more of these videos, so I know that you guys are watching and understanding, and this is actually helpful for the cloud security community.